And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3. It is Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024, coming to you as always from Long Beach, California. We got an Oregon football and recruiting mailbag edition for you guys today, coming to you live on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And then we're also streaming live on Twitter/X at mtorresports. That's where you can find me, joined by my guy, Travis Rooke-Ley, for another great edition of your go-to Oregon football and recruiting podcast. But before we get into that, the Ducks Dish podcast is brought to you in part by Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Give their homemade tortillas a try. They have great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Travis, what is going on, man? It has been a little minute since we got to do one of these. You were in Hawaii. We still did it. And then I had my move and my camping trip. So a lot of stuff has happened since I last got to see you here on the channel. How the heck are you?
Yeah, man. Good to be back. Celebrating my twin brother and sister's 32nd birthday today. So scrolling, patrolling all around town in Portland today, trying to find the best chocolate chip cookie, which is their favorite food of choice. So any listeners out there that live in the Portland area, got a recommendation for the best cookie, shoot it our way. But otherwise, just enjoying summer, enjoying that last weekend of obviously a lot of recruiting fireworks, and good to be back chatting some ball.
Absolutely glad to be back on with you, Travis. And if you guys are watching us or listening to us, on podcast or here on YouTube, go check out yesterday's episode with myself and Justin Hopkins, where we broke down and recapped an insane weekend, is what I titled it, an insane recruiting weekend for Dan Lanning and the Ducks in Eugene. And Travis, I think that's a good place to start, because it really felt like one of those weekends where just one podcast doesn't quite do it justice, right? So we were talking a little bit before we went live here about some of our thoughts, but man, maybe we just start things off before we get to some questions from our ScoopDuck readers and viewers and listeners about your thoughts from this last weekend, which saw Oregon rise to number 5 in the On3 recruiting rankings nationally for the 2025 cycle.
For sure, man. I think this weekend was the perfect illustration of the way in which recruiting's changed a little bit, and you see the ebbs and flows with these recruitments as they come down to the wire. You notice with Desan Brame, that recruitment, and some of the national experts, and some of the ebbs and flows with that one coming down to the wire, with ultimately Oregon winning out. You saw the Dorian Brew commitment come, for me personally, I can only speak for myself, honestly, out of nowhere. I knew we had a little bit better of a shot than I think we were being given credit for. And I think Lanning has shown in the past, we love to kind of lay in the weeds and make a little splash when it comes to some of those 5-star guys. But for me, and it sounds like a lot of other guys, including possibly Lanning itself, that was a little bit of a surprise. So just a fun weekend to follow. But I think that for some of especially the people on ScoopDuck who we're feeling a little bit of the lull when some of those predictions started coming in for some of those other guys, and obviously losing out on a couple targets that I know myself and a lot of Duck fans were excited for. I think that a lot of these recruitments, both good and bad, are going to come down to October, November, December. So I think that, June commitments are awesome and all. And I think that we'll see, and you've seen this staff show that they do a great job of holding on to commitments. I think our decommit rate has to be one of the lowest in the country over the last few years. But I also think at the same time, you'll see the Ducks stay in some of those commitments that we lost out on, and ultimately have a chance if we think that we're about to have the season that we expected.
Yeah, and the Dorian Brew commitment, to your point, was one that came completely out of left field. I mean, Oregon was a finalist, obviously, seeing that they got an official visit, especially for a recruit that I don't believe had a group of top schools out publicly. That's typically how you can kind of gauge what the top schools are. And the Ducks did host Dorian Brew for an official visit. And I talked to him before the official visit, and he wasn't someone, I think I spoke with Justin about this a little bit. He wasn't like gushing over the Ducks. He wasn't, head over heels in love with them. And like they were the clear leader coming into the visit. If anything, I think that Ohio State, maybe even Texas, could have been viewed as one in better position. Probably Ohio State, seeing that he's an Ohio native. But I will say the one thing I remember from that interview with Brew was he was pretty optimistic, or at least his parents were pretty optimistic about that track town aspect of Eugene, and how that was kind of one of the things that made it more of a happening spot than maybe it gets credit for. And if you've been to Eugene, I think that's always the thing that really kind of pops to me, is just the scale of the production, if you will, of Oregon football and really Oregon athletics as a whole. Like you wouldn't expect something or a brand as big as Oregon to be as big as it is for a school that's in, a small town in Western Oregon. So the Brew commitment was phenomenal. I mean, I talked about it yesterday, how I was in the middle of a hike and I happened to get some more bars, and I took my girlfriend's phone to look at the class, and what do you know, Dorian Brew is in the fold. But what a phenomenal win for Rashad Wadood and Dan Lanning to pull that one out. We know that defensive back has always been a premium position. And I think Oregon's going to continue to be a top destination for guys like Brew, as we saw this weekend.
Yeah, and I think that with him specifically, I know we got a couple questions about that commitment, and I know Steve Wilfong obviously referenced some different like aspects of it. I think that the only thing I can add there that goes to the larger question is just that I think this staff, not only the football staff, but the larger like recruiting staff, has a really good feel for like the national narrative, momentum, those type of things. And I think that you've seen them, and this is a perfect illustration of it, line guys up in the past in a strategic way to kind of capitalize on the moment. In this case, you could see that build as the week went with different commits, and you start to see the Bud Elliott's of the world, Josh Pates of the world, talking Oregon recruiting, really capitalizing on that like national narrative and those opportunities to have Oregon be out in the discourse, which is the thing that Oregon has always been great about, is like getting people to talk about them as a national brand. And you see the whole Oregon staff really capitalizing on that. So I think that with Bruce specifically, you saw, maybe, I'm sure the staff started to get a feel for, okay, Lincoln Cure probably going to Kansas State, Noah McHale looks like he's going to be an A&M for now. Let's line this one up and make a little bit of a splash. So I think that that's something that I've noticed, is you don't see a lot of like randomness in terms of the commits Oregon is getting. All of it seems to be part of a larger strategic plan to be discussed and be out there. And for us, like you just mentioned a second ago, for a sleepy town in Oregon, you've got to do things like that. The Nike piece is huge, but you combine that with this like very strategic marketing pitch that's been through Nike and been through all the connections they have in the business world. Like this is a whole combined effort to make Oregon a national brand. And you can see that they've had a ton of success with that.
And I don't really even know if there's a metric for this, Travis, but kind of to your point, it really feels like Oregon has solidified themselves as one of the best schools in the country, or maybe we can narrow it more specifically to football, but just at capitalizing on momentum or generating momentum. I had a tweet out last week talking about how the Ducks had the Generation O uniforms, the first edition, come out, which was insane. The video with DeAnthony Thomas and the whole Black Mamba connection with the blackout uniforms that they had. They had the Rooted in Substance Nike documentary that you saw tell the story of the broader relationship between Phil Knight and the Oregon Athletics brand. And then you have this huge string of commitments, 5 in total, I guess, 4 from the weekend, but 5 if you count Brandon Finney, who Justin and I talked about yesterday. But it's just tremendous work, and it's not something it's not as simple as saying, okay, we have all these guys ready to go. let's just line it up and let it rip. That's months, sometimes years of recruiting in the works behind the scenes. I know for Jordan Davison, who I just wrote a story about over on ScoopDuck, which you can check us out for just $1. I think that's an incredible value, but he spoke about his commitment and how he wants to help Oregon get a national championship. That's a guy that has been on Oregon's radar and, in effect, my radar for 2 years now, more than 2 years. He was one of the first guys that I really got to know when I moved down to Long Beach. So I'm kind of rambling a bit there, and I know we should get to some questions here, but just a tremendous, tremendous job from this Oregon staff from top to bottom, putting this momentum together. And then, I guess at that point, you kind of just get to sit back and watch the fireworks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of this stuff relates to some of the questions that we've gotten. I mean, there's a question here about Oregon's new uniforms and other colors and stuff. To your point, I've heard that the other colors are even cooler than the black ones that we saw. And these are from some people that I trust that have seen them. So I love to hear that. And I don't have any specific dates myself, but what I would just say to what you just said is I think it's all going to be done in a strategic manner. So you see all this July build right now. I think we'll see some more recruiting wins throughout the month. We obviously have the release of the NCAA football game, which I know the Ducks have some plans in store for that. I think this is all building towards this like football season where there's some high hopes in that building. So I think you'll see some strategic releases throughout the next month into August in terms of the uniforms, NCAA game, some other recruiting wins lined up, all leading up to, what's going to be a preseason top 5 ranking and a chance to really make a run in a national championship this year. So I think just to kind of cap that point you had and lead us into this question about uniform, I think you'll see all of that kind of tied together over the next couple months, kind of in a slow fashion leading up to that season opener. And like I said, I mean, uniforms wise, it sounds like you love the black as much as I did. I love the like hint to the past. I mean, those diamond plates, those are some of the times when I really became a fan. I was high school, South Eugene, 5 minutes from campus. Still got I think the first one they ever released was a Haloti Nada in 2007 that I have. I think I have a 96 jersey of it. I might be off on the year or two, but just thinking about the like ode to the past and the move to the future. Super cool to see that in the black uniform. And like I said, the people I trust have said some of those other colors that are coming have been even better.
It's always exciting talking about uniforms, Travis, and I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe saw some more uniforms get released as we get closer and closer to the Big Ten Media Day in Indianapolis. I feel like that's probably a good time to release it, if I'm just giving my 2 cents. Before we get to our first question, Travis, just wanted to give a quick shout out to this comment. William McBride said, just join the ScoopDuck fam on the live stream. We absolutely love to hear that. As we continue to grow our community over there, you get access to all the stuff for myself, Justin, Chad, and Steve Wolfong, and then our not always lovely, but always entertaining message boards. Some people are super out of pocket over there. And if you look at our stuff, you can tell, but hey, it's part of what makes it fun. And I need to do maybe a little bit better job moderating that, because I know Justin does a lot of it on his own.
You made the right choice, William. You won't regret it.
All right, how about we get into some questions here, Travis, before we get too sidetracked with chatter?
Yeah, let's do it. Touched on a little bit already, but we can probably just wrap a little bit of a bow on it. A lot of questions about kind of what's next for linebacker and tight end recruiting. I think a lot of that stems from, like I mentioned, losing out on Lincoln Cure and Noah McHale, which I know a couple people probably considered a good chance to join the class. But what are you hearing on what's next at linebacker and tight end?
Yeah, so starting at linebacker, I think the answer is pretty simple. I mean, you're going to continue to recruit Noah McHale as hard as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. I think if I had to choose a flip target that is at the top of Oregon's board, I would think that it's probably Noah McHale. Maybe you have a guy like an Adonis Curry, who's also committed to A&M from the Southern California area on defense on your list. But yeah, so as for what's next there, I think you're looking at Justin Hill, who is set to come off the board tomorrow out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Winton Woods, kind of listed as an edge linebacker target, but I think Oregon still feels pretty decent about their chances there. But that is certainly a recruitment that feels like it's coming down to the wire, with Hill also obviously considering Ohio State, Alabama, and USC. I don't think I've really ever heard USC mentioned as a serious contender, but those are his top 4 schools right now. And that one has been one that's been a little difficult to get a beat on, because I think you have I think Justin was saying that our Alabama site, Bama Online, is saying that it's Bama and Ohio State, but maybe Oregon isn't getting talked about enough in this recruitment. I had a story out yesterday about why I think Oregon still has a shot and could be a reasonable, realistic landing spot for Justin Hill. But Justin Hill, Noah McHale, LSU linebacker commit Keelan Moses, I think Oregon probably leads for him coming out of his official visit. I mean, he had one of the strongest quotes I've ever gotten about Dan Lanning and just his authenticity, his work ethic, his nature as a person. And then you also have, I was going to say Gavin Nix, but he's off the board now to Miami, the coveted IMG linebacker. But hey, he loved his official visit to Oregon and has always had really glowing remarks, but he didn't have the best travel experience making it back to the Sunshine State. I think he got delayed in Seattle and had to take a whole extra day out of his trip. So I think that might have been part of the nail in the coffin for him to stay closer to home and play in Florida. That's linebacker. I wanted to give you a chance to respond to that before we talk about tight end.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all 3 of those guys, obviously all committed elsewhere, but all committed to schools that I would just say are at like an interesting inflection point when it comes to this year in terms of what it could look like. So I think for Lanning, you're going against Texas A&M, LSU, Miami, and just as easily those schools could go 10-2 as they could go 6-6 this year. They've all been pretty inconsistent over the last few years. So I think you'll see us stay in the game for all 3 of those guys. And I think, I'll keep referencing it. I think everything I hear out of this building is so optimistic about this team and this year that I think you see the staff banking on having a ton of success. In terms of these recruitments specifically, you see the staff looking at a defense that's going to be very, very good, and then graduate 2 starting linebackers. So I think that opportunity and success that you'll see throughout the fall, I'd be pretty surprised if we don't land one of those 3 that you mentioned.
So that's why you got to play the long game for a lot of these top prospects. And I think Oregon's at a good spot with more guys set to come off the board, like a Justin Hill tomorrow, or Marion Robinson later on this week, I believe. Chris Lawson is another one that comes to mind. You're at a good spot right now where you've built enough of a foundation, probably more than a foundation at this point. I think it's 14 verbal commitments. You're going to see Oregon kind of get to that point where it's like, okay, hey, we feel good about the group we have in the fold now. We're going to continue to pursue some of these top tier guys, those 5 stars like your Trey McNutt, DJ Pickett, Jonah Williams. Those are all going to go, as of right now, it looks like at least into the season. And then, of course, you see them continue to chip away or at least stay in the picture with some of their flip targets. So that by the time the early signing period comes around, end of conference championship week, that kind of time period, that's when you really will see them put that full court press on, at least if the past is any indication of how things typically go in the recruiting calendar. Travis, I told you that we're going to kind of do the mailbag questions from the ScoopDuck readers and then Twitter first, but this question here in the live stream kind of already overlaps with what we're hitting on, so I feel like it makes sense to throw it up here. So B Rave asks, do you think we lost Cure because of getting Brame? Are we better off with Brame? Of course, Lincoln Cure, the Goodland, Kansas tight end that committed to Kansas State, and then Deshaun Brame, the Derby, Kansas tight end that committed to Oregon. I don't think so. I don't think that the Ducks lost out on Cure because they got Brame. I don't think it was a one or the other situation. I think they wanted both if they could have, but it really kind of felt like Cure was more than likely going to be sticking with Kansas State. But I feel relatively confident saying that Oregon was the number 2 school there. given how closely I've gotten to cover that recruitment and get to know Cure and kind of where his headspace is at. So I don't know if I'd say that they're better off with Brame, but I don't think Brame is by any means a consolation prize or anything like that, because that dude's a special athlete. QB11 was raving about him in our ScoopDuck eval following his commitment. That's a really special tight end. That's a guy that I think is the signature win for Drew Maringer so far in his time with Oregon. And I think that Duck fans should be really, really excited about getting Brame.
Yeah, and just in terms of moving forward too, I think that honestly the story is going to be pretty similar to linebacker. I don't think we're thankfully at a place, like you mentioned, commits wise, roster wise, where I don't think we need to move down the board too much when it comes to losing out on a few of these guys that we wanted. Personally, I mean, the first thing when I started to hear that Cure was going to go to Kansas State, I mean, I have to say I got some Elijah Rushing vibes from that. Not going to say that he's going to be a guaranteed flip like that, but I think it's I heard someone say this the other day, like it's easy to commit to Kansas State, your hometown school, in June, but that's a little bit harder in December, depending on what the seasons look like from our different perspectives, you know. I don't know the guy. I've never talked to him. You obviously interviewed him, but where Oregon's at in the Big Ten roster wise, you know, competing over the next few years for a national title, I feel pretty confident saying Kansas State's not going to be in that same spot. So I think I think we'll stay in the game there. Long story short, and I think we'll see how the season goes. And, you know, I think that the type of year that we think Terrence Ferguson might have, the type of year we might see Kenyon Sadiq have, I think Will Stein will definitely do his best to showcase that we have a spot for him and how we would use a guy like that, because he's a heck of an athlete at, I think, 6'6". So I think in terms of tight end recruiting, whether it's him or Caleb Edwards, if he does, in fact, commit to Alabama later this week, I think you'll see the Ducks stay on those guys similar to linebacker rather than moving down the board a ton. I just don't think we're at the spot anymore as a program where you're going to see us like drop and just like take a 3-star to take a 3-star kid.
Talking with Travis Rooke-Ley here on a Tuesday morning. We got our Oregon football and recruiting mailbag coming to you live on the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Now that I am back on the grid with Wi-Fi, I'm hoping to ramp up the podcast once again and bring these to you guys as often as possible. Got around 15-ish minutes left, Travis, it looks like. So let's keep things rolling and get to our next question.
Yep. Staying on recruiting a little bit. If you both had to guess where Oregon finishes in the recruiting rankings, what would you guess for recruiting rankings? Just where do you think they'll finish in average rating per recruit and not rankings based on numbers? So I guess maybe overall class rank and rating specific average.
Okay. Yeah, that seems reasonable. I feel pretty confident saying that they're going to finish top 5, Travis. I mean, I think a good piece to include maybe in part of our answer here is that on 3 Steve Wiltfong said that they have a legitimate shot at the number 1 recruiting class in the country. And that's not something that I think he makes a statement he makes lightly. That's certainly not something I take lightly, being someone that has covered Oregon recruiting for a little bit now. We've seen them have the number 1 class, but not finish with the number 1 class. I want to say that was over on Rivals during the early days of the Willie Taggart era, when that momentum was palpable. It felt like you could grab it, and they were going into the Sunshine State landing guys left and right. It felt like, but feel pretty confident saying that they're probably going to be right in that top 5 area again, with the guys that they have in the fold, the guys that they're continuing to pursue, how their NIL is functioning right now, how much cohesion and sync, I guess there is. I don't know if that's the right word, just within this staff. And then just with the season that I think Oregon's capable of having, I think top 5 finish is pretty reasonable for them. And then I think if you're looking at the ratings for the Ducks right now, it seems like they got a pretty solid 4-star average, I want to say. I'm trying to do a little bit of improvising here and think on my feet, but pretty solid 4-star average. I know at least On3 has them at a 92.08 in their class score. And I mean, yeah, I'd probably say north of 90, maybe close to 91 will maybe be their average commit rate rating. So maybe not the best, most accurate answer there, but I think top 5 is going to be well within reach. And then, if you're in that 91, 92 rating average per commit, I mean, you're looking real good. And that's some special territory.
For sure. I mean, I actually think for the first time I can probably ever remember, I find myself almost more confident that we're going to be in the top 5 in terms of average rating per recruit than overall. And the only reason I say that is because I think I think the only way we would not finish in the top 5 overall is just our numbers may be a little bit low, which based upon where our roster's at, our blue chip ratio, everything, sign me up. I mean, I am 100% of the belief that the average ranking of the recruits you have is the more indicative number anyways. I think you see right now some of those schools who are in the top 10 already have, 25 commits. So that to me has never been the true barometer of how well you're doing as a staff and the roster that you're building. I mean, right now I see that the average recruit ranking we have right now, I think would be our best that we've ever signed. And I only see that going up. I mean, the guys we're in on and the guys we're going to sign from 14 on are top guys. DJ Pickett, DeCorian Moore. I mean, you see these 5 stars we're in on, Michael Terry, Jonah Williams. You pluck off a couple of those guys and add it to some of the other higher end targets that we have, some of those flip targets that we have. I don't think we're just taking any guy the rest of this staff, and I think you'll only see that average recruit ranking only go up from here.
And I think just to kind of put a bow on this answer, Travis, I know Justin's spoken about it before, and I can definitely agree with the sentiment. I've never seen Oregon in the mix legitimately with this many 5 stars. And I know everybody loves to talk about 5 stars. I mean, I love saying, when I was talking about the Dorian Brew commitment, 5-star cornerback it's definitely got a layer of pop, of pizzazz, whatever you want to call it. It gets fans excited, but I have never seen them in legitimate contention for this many 5 stars. And when I say legitimate contention, obviously I don't mean landing all of them, but I have my prediction in for Trey McNutt. So I think that would make 3 5 stars if he were to commit. I think I'm kind of feeling more and more confident that they'll land one of Michael Terry or DeCorian Moore, which is, a pretty bold statement, I would say. But they're really in the thick of it for both of those guys. I'd probably give the edge for Michael Terry right now. But this is a new era of Oregon football recruiting, a new tier that they're breaking into. They signed the highest rated class in program history last year. And I think that they are certainly on pace to match that, if not possibly exceed it. So the Ducks are crushing it right now. And given how everything is going, I don't think they're going to be slowing down anytime soon.
For sure. I mean, you saw a question there coming in through the YouTube live, just asking what's more likely, a DJ Pickett or a DeCorian Moore commitment to Oregon. I think I probably agree with you there, which it sounds like you just somewhat answered it with DeCorian Moore. But one guy I just want to mention, I think, and you started to hear some chatter coming through the Texas boards and a few other places today. I think Duck fans should not sleep on Jonah Williams and where they're at there. I think the baseball piece of it is starting to work a little more and more in our favor. And you saw I know one of the Texas On3 guys today mentioned that he's hearing Jonah Williams and some buzz for Oregon there. So I think that's one that I know myself, I had kind of pushed to that second tier a little bit, but I'm starting to consider him in that first level of those 5 stars, along with a DeCorian Moore, a Michael Terry, a Trey McNutt, where I'm like, no, we're real time, big time in the game there.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, now that I have this question on the screen from Chargers Nation, what's more likely, a DJ Pickett or a DeCorian Moore commitment to Oregon? I didn't post it just because things were all crazy at the time, but I was speaking to a source about DJ Pickett coming out of that official visit. And I guess the nugget that I can kind of share here on on the show with DJ Pickett, the Ducks went like completely off script with his visit itinerary. And I think that is something that makes it really, really unique in that recruitment. I know Steve Wiltfong was talking about him earlier today. He's been out to Oregon 4 times now, which I think is probably why he went off script for his official visit. And they just kind of rolled with it. And, we're able to kind of just say, hey, I don't want to say let him call the shots, but they really, really tailored that visit to kind of his wants, I guess, which I think is a very personal touch. And I don't know if any of the other finalists did that, but I don't know, man. I mean, Oregon has 2 commitments from Florida now. If their DBs like Jabbar Muhammad play the way that we think they're going to play, I think that they're looking more realistic. I mean, I think Decoria Moore has always been realistic, but maybe feels a little bit far-fetched just because of all the momentum that we've seen for Texas. But I don't know. I mean, I'm starting to feel better about Oregon's chances with DJ Pickett. Obviously, that's not a prediction that he's going to land at Oregon. There is still so long to go in that recruitment, but at least coming out of the official visit, I'm continuing to feel better about Oregon's chances to ultimately pull that one off, which I think is all you can really ask for if you're an Oregon fan.
Yeah, and I think once again, like with him, it comes down to you've got Lanning, this defensive staff, all recruiting him, giving him that personal touch. Obviously, speaks incredibly highly of that staff, and you're going against teams and programs that there's uncertainty. Miami, LSU, I know are mentioned a lot for DJ Pickett. Like, who knows? I certainly like Dan Lanning versus Brian Kelly when it comes to if they're both going to be recruiting a guy big time. I like our chances there. They've got LSU's defense last year was putrid, absolutely terrible. And I don't see any reason why it's going to be way better this year. Miami, who knows? Obviously signed a bunch of portal guys, but unless Mario can figure out how to manage a game, we'll see. So I don't know. I think if we have the season that we want, we're in the game. He's already been out here, 4 times? Hopefully see him again for an official visit in the fall, or for an unofficial visit in the fall. Who knows? I mean, I'm with you. I think that we've just lined ourselves up to be right there when it comes decision time for these guys. And I think resources-wise, we're going to be competitive no matter what.
I completely agree. Definitely. We'll see what's going on there.
All right, let's crank out a couple more real quick.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we had a little bit of a delay there. I had a call come in, so that's probably why my laptop got a little funky. But I think we're good now. I'm still cool on time, so we're just going based on your timing, I think.
Yeah, let's go 1 to 2 more here. We can probably talk a little bit about this. If you are able to talk about it, is it possible to go through the process of what happens in the recruitments in the last hours leading up to a commitment? Is it us upping our offer or other? What is it that makes us so successful in the final hour?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think how much I'm allowed to say on this. Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it is just knowing when to turn up the heat. I think that might be whether that is NIL offer, whether that is communication, whether that is your pitch, something that I'm kind of I guess I don't know how I say stretching, but like I'm kind of guessing here. Like I haven't heard this part specifically, but like if there is something that a recruit really wants, you've kind of been maybe like I don't know if I want to give this to them or not, but it's like hey, if that's going to be something that's going to push us across the finish line, hey, we can make it happen. Maybe it's something like you can wear this jersey number that has like family significance to you, or we will be open to you playing that position. I think there's probably just buttons that the staff can push here or there. Or doing something like bringing in DeAnthony Thomas to hang out with Michael Terry. Like there's during his official visit, there's things you can do. I think to really try to put some finishing touches on these recruitments or create some separation for yourself in these these final moments. So that's kind of my best way to answer it right now without getting into too much sensitive material. But we know, or maybe you bring in Dan Lanning. Like, I think that the level of involvement for a head coach in a recruitment, I think also speaks a lot to how big of a priority a certain recruit is. Because as well as I do, Travis, we don't see any recruitments where it's just one guy on this staff recruiting someone. It's your position coach, it's another guy on that side of the ball, and a recruiting staff or Lanning as well. So it's pretty remarkable to see it all come together.
Yeah, I mean, there's been enough in the national narrative out there to know that like the Nike piece, the NIL piece, like Oregon's in a good spot. It's benefited us, no doubt. I think the piece that doesn't get discussed enough when it comes to this is like the relationships, authenticity piece that comes down to this entire staff. And as you mentioned, like the collective effort of the entire staff. I think that as these recruitments come down to the wire, schools have always like negative recruited the heck out of Oregon. Being whether it's in Eugene, whether it's in the Pac-12, who doesn't play any defense. For years, there's been just like the constant negative recruiting about Oregon. And I think this staff just does an incredible job like combating that. You saw the whole, push that official visit weekend, the whole We Outside thing. Just like little simple things like that of just like pushing back on that stuff. So I think the thing that Oregon does do beyond the like resources discussion, which is certainly a part of it, is building the relationships, building the like whole community feel when those guys are in town, the little personal touches that you mentioned. But then as it gets down to the wire, like it's a team effort. And it comes down to like oftentimes when guys are ready to make a decision, like it's about relationships and trust and family. And those things tend to win out at the last minute. And I think that even though distance can be a factor, this staff like does a really, really good job of like leveraging those things.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of speak to your point and maybe to wrap up the answer for this one, I, from my understanding, Oregon doesn't do a whole lot of the negative recruiting. Recruits have said that they're so confident in their own pitch they don't feel like they need to negative recruit. Maybe it happens here and there. I'm sure maybe you have some quibs or you poke some shots at whatever at some other schools, but it's not on a huge scale. Is kind of what I'm saying. I feel like I'd probably be naive to say that it doesn't happen to some degree. I feel like every school does it, but I don't think Oregon has to make that a big part of it, and they just stay true to who they are, and the on-field product kind of speaks for itself, and they're starting to pump more and more and more guys out to the league, and when you have those things at your disposal with the Nike brand, with the NIL working the way that Oregon has it right now, you're not becoming bulletproof, but it's harder to poke holes in that. And then now to the last point, Dan Lanning's stability at the top, Dan Lanning's commitment to Oregon in the long term. Those are unique things that only a handful of schools can truly offer.
Yep. 100%. All right, let's get to this last one quickly before we hop off. Depending on how things shake out come camp, I'm counting 8 transfers starting on defense. With last year's and our current recruiting class so far, how many transfers do you think we will need to start in 2025?
Yeah, that was an interesting question. I saw that one on the doc that you put together. So we're looking we're looking 2 seasons ahead. Is that right?
Well, yeah, after this season, start of 2025.
Okay. That is really tough to answer right now. I mean, let's see.
Let me take it because I thought a little bit on it.
Okay.
I think that what you'll see ideally is the number of transfers we take every year getting smaller and smaller. I mean, I think that's the ideal world. The Ohio States, Georgias, Texases of the world, you see that their classes based upon their roster, it's intended to plug holes. I mean, you want a majority of your roster obviously to be built from the prep ranks. So the spots I'm looking at to where you could see a possible starter come in through the transfer ranks next year would be Possibly offensive line. I think that's always going to be there until we build up that spot a little bit more. We're obviously graduating both starting linebackers. I think that we feel super, super good about the 3 true freshmen there. We've got some other depth there, but I could see us bringing in a guy if it's the right guy. Beyond that, man, I mean, you always look for an impact guy no matter where they are, but the way the roster is lining up to be next year, I think we're in a pretty good spot. And I'd be surprised if we take the type of transfer class that we took the last 2 years.
And I think that that's probably where I would go with my answer, Travis. I don't think I can give too specific of an answer just right now, but I think that Oregon has been a school that has built the right way as far as putting the emphasis on high school and then bolstering through the portal. That's what all the most successful teams have done. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But when you recruit the way Oregon does and you get some of these younger guys on the field early, and you're seeing them have more and more young guys hit early, right? Look at last year: Mateo, Tatum, Blake Purchase on defense. Maybe we see Aaron Flowers pop a bit this year, or a Peyton Woodyard, so someone like that. So I think that the better that Oregon recruits high school, the less reliance you'll see on the transfer portal. And that's probably the easiest way to put it, because I didn't expect Oregon to hit the portal as hard as they did this past offseason. So that was kind of a surprise. But because they went so all in, I don't think they want to do that on a regular basis. So I feel like 2025 is a little bit far out for me to answer. Maybe that's on me for not prepping a bit more. But I don't think that Oregon's going to be as reliant on the portal as they maybe appear to be this offseason. And maybe it's not reliant. It's just like, some of those were straight up luxury ads. Did you need a Jabbar Muhammad? No. Did you need a Derek Harmon? No, you would have been okay. But those types of additions push you over the edge and, get you in this standing, this hype zone, this confidence nationally, not just on the West Coast, not just in Oregon, nationally, that the Ducks have gotten themselves to this offseason.
Yeah, and just to wrap it, I think that that's the key point you just made at the end there that I kind of left out, which is when you get your roster to this level where you truly have a shot at the title, like, you're not going to skimp on the last guy that might put you over the top. So there were certainly guys in the portal this year that I don't think our roster needed. I don't think we needed Derek Harmon, but Derek Harmon gives us a better chance to win a national title. And that is the only thing that building cares about, that staff cares about, Phil Knight cares about, is winning a title. And so when I think when you get to this spot, there's needs, and then there's, can this guy help us win a title based upon where we're at? And so I think you'll still see the staff view the portal as that way, where, hey, we may not need a receiver, but does this guy give us a 0.5% better chance of beating Ohio State in Indianapolis this year? Yeah. Okay, then let's get him. So I think the calculus changes a little bit when you get to this level of roster where it's like, no, we're going for it. And any guy that we think that might help, like, we're going to get him.
That's a great way to put it. Who are those guys that are going to push you over the top? That kind of a thing. Travis, before we get out of here, man, just any final remarks, any final thoughts from you before we hopefully get you back next week for another weekly mailbag?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that obviously hopefully readers saw J-Hop's article yesterday with his predictions over the next, few weeks of guys announcing, and it didn't look too rosy for the Ducks. But I'll just say I think that July is going to be not all bad news. And I think you'll see the Ducks, you'll see some guys starting to line up some commitments. And I think the staff knows that we're all about building momentum for the season. And with the release of the game, the release of the uniforms, Big Ten Media Day, all that, I think that 14 commit list we're at right now is probably going to go up a little bit over the next couple months leading into the year. And I think that you'll start to see some of those bigger guys possibly set some dates and hopefully jump in the boat. So good things ahead.
No doubt. No doubt. It's going to be a fun time, as always, to cover Oregon. I think, Yeah, there's ebbs and flows. I think that, sometimes there's the doom and gloomers, and then there's sometimes the people think Oregon's getting everybody, and there's always going to be some kind of a happy medium, right? And I think with Oregon, you're more than likely going to be on the more positive side. You just have to give it some time, or maybe it's not the best. Like you said, maybe it's not all rosy. Right now as we stand in early July here. But Travis, we got almost 500 people here in the live stream between Twitter and YouTube. So cannot thank you guys enough for tuning in to today's show. We love having you along. But if you want to find more of Travis, you can follow him on Twitter/X at Travis Rooke-Ley. He also is a prominent poster over on ScoopDuck. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on all social media platforms at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel, and then come check us out. Come see us at ScoopDuck for just $1. You are not going to find better Oregon football and recruiting coverage anywhere else. And then do me a favor, share the show, share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, thank you guys so much for being along, for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.